Good evening, good morning, and good night. Welcome to Inappropriate Radio. It's your host, Tashana, the hostess with the mostest. Let's get into this. So we're going to just go ahead and get right into this. Tonight we're going to be discussing titanium. Now, the last element that we spoke of, child. The last element that we spoke of was known to be the strongest metal, which is tungsten, right? It's letter W on the periodic table. But this titanium is known to be strong as well, but in many different other areas. Now, this is also a transition metal, so it's really important. It is the ninth most abundant in the Earth's crust. It can last for up to about 100,000 years. It is lightweight, but it is not naturally produced in our bodies, right? We get it by way of the air, breathing it in. It's not really toxic, okay? And it's not found in its purest form in the environment or in the atmosphere. It's usually found combined or alloyed with other metals. Okay, so ilmenite, rutile, sphene, brolyite, anatase. It's a whole bunch of different, or quite a few, right? The titanium is usually maybe 75 to 95% of that thing, and it is extracted from those other metals. Okay, it just passes through our body, so it's not really harmful. Okay, it's not toxic, but it's a heavy metal. It's not toxic to the human body. Now, this is where some things started to get really interesting, because it is one of the radioactive elements created in supernovae. Now, remember, the supernovae is the explosion of the star, but this is one of the only metals so far that have been found in the sun and on the moon. And it's only in M-type stars, letter M, like might, right? Or move. These are the cooler temperature stars, right? And when I started to think of this, I started to think of the mothership, because I'm like, okay, it's a heavy metal that's not toxic. It's found in the air, but it's not produced in our atmosphere, but it's found on the moon and the sun. So this element tends to be traveling probably a little bit more frequently than some of the other transition metals that we've covered so far. Now, it's mined in Australia, South Africa, Sierra Leone, Russia, and Japan, with China leading in the world for the most titanium metal, right? And it is highly reactive. Now, this is when I started saying, okay, this is crazy. It is found in its oxidated state. Okay? In other words, an oxide is when oxygen causes the electron to be lost in a reaction, right? There's a bond with oxygen. So I will give you an example. Hydrogen is I'm trying to say this in a way where it makes sense, but basically what hydrogen is to water, right? Titanium is to many of the transition metals, right? It is one of those things, one second. It is one of those metals that is used all over, right? And this is where I started saying, okay, this is crazy. It requires a temperature or degrees that exceeds 3,300, and this metal cannot be detected in most metal detectors. So this is why I was like, okay, this is interesting, right? Your bones can grow onto it and form a tight bond, like your actual bones. And it was discovered in 1791. It wasn't named until 1795, and it didn't become prominent in manufacturing until 1910. So over 100 years later, we still hadn't really found its use. And this is an element that's pretty rare, not only because of its qualities, not only because of how scarce it is, because it is the most ninth abundant element in the Earth's crust, but simply because of how the industries use it. And a lot of times we go through, these different limbs to understand, but we don't really even know how good these metals can do us, right? So then I started looking over into the spiritual side, right? Titanium is said to increase your life force. It absorbs negative energy. It balances the body's electromagnetic energy more than any other metal. It costs more than other metals. It is, and I mean other metals in its class, right? It's 35 cents a pound. That's pretty cheap when you compare it to like gold or silver, copper, or even aluminum. But when you compare it to other elements in its class, then you could probably appreciate it a little more, right? Oxygen makes it harder, so that makes it easier to crack. But like chemicals, acid, and even salt water makes it obvious that it's resistant to corrosion. So this is when I started thinking like, okay, this is one of those elements that passes through the body, and it's not known to be harmful to the human body, but it is compatible. It's considered to be the most compatible metal because it's not resistant to corrosion from bodily fluids. So this is when I started thinking, well, I had already started thinking about the mothership when I started reading all the different things. And then when I started reading all of this, and then I'm like, okay, it's found on the sun and it's found on the moon. So what happens is when white dwarf stars explode, after gorging or greedily eating or like just munching, chomping down on companion star, the titanium is produced, right, as a result of the supernovae or the star explosion. And these are only with cooler temperature stars. Okay, so when I started thinking about the mothership, it started making me think about just the different timelines that vehicles can jump. And it made me think about us, like humans, the human body, and how the human body is capable of even levitating and just being able to withstand so much. And we've had the discussion of, the physical fleshly body not really being necessary in other dimensions. But when we start going into metaphysics, you start really realizing that there's a lot of different things that are at play. And a lot of these things, we literally don't have an understanding simply because we don't fully understand the elements. If we had a better idea or understanding of the elements, then it would be really easy to put pieces together. Even when they start to do different investigations about, certain instances with different, events that happen, if we can have a better understanding of the different elements, then we will have a better understanding of the occurrences that are going on in different dimensions. Because remember, there's not many elements on Earth that are not in the atmosphere, that are not in other galaxies, right? So it's important for us to really pay attention to the elements, when they came and where they came. That is all very telling. If we had a good idea of when, these elements started to form and take place, it'll help us pinpoint when other events started to happen, when things started changing, pivotal points in history that may have been skipped over because, these elements are in the Earth's crust, they're in the atmosphere, and we're just learning about them in all of these places, right? A lot of these elements were mistakenly discovered, and if they were discovered, they were more than likely discovered in the midst of someone mining, right? This is how we find them in Earth's crust. We just started using technology to find out where these elements are in the entire 3D, dimension. Back in 1795, they didn't have the tools or the resources. I'm not going to say that they didn't, but I'm saying compared to today, there was a lot of handwork going on. There wasn't a lot of computer work, right? So investigations took longer. People, they checked behind themselves to make sure that their analysis was indeed correct. More assumptions were made and then later on corrected as the investigation went on, right? So you can't assume that everyone was aware that water was hydrogen plus oxygen, right? You can't assume that everyone knew the difference between, helium, hydrogen, and lithium, and you understand? And obviously, these things gain a name because of where they're, found geographically, who found them, and what was being done upon this discovery. All of these things affect the labeling, everything, right? So I just thought it would be good to come back to an element that is known, but a lot of people don't even realize, because titanium is used in the automotive, the military uses it for armor, protective armor. It's used in the dental industry. It's used, I think I said the automotive. It's used, for airplanes. It's used in so many different industries. And all we know is that it's a really hard, corrosion resistant element. And to be honest, I actually wanted to do a little more research, but the creator said go ahead and record it. What you have is enough. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna end it here. Well, I'm gonna get up out of here. I do love y'all, truly. I hope y'all are drinking y'all water, eating y'all fruit and vegetables, and sipping on your own tea because it's free. I hope y'all are getting ready to come see me on Saturday, 3 o'clock. Don't be late. Be early. You could come late. It doesn't matter. Just come. All right. Love y'all. Peace.